Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody else, welcome to my video. My name is Sam McHale-North. Thank you for joining me. Today, we're going to look at the world's best environmental photography in 2020. Let's get started. So the premise of the video is simple. We take the world's best photojournalism and analyse it. But the catch is, I don't know the story behind the headline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the World Press Photo Competition's nominees for the environmental category, and I'm going to try and tell you what I think is going on within the picture. And once I've analysed it and got as much of the juiciness out of it just from that headline, we'll then take a look at what the description is, and we'll see how our opinions have changed based on the context that we've gotten from the story. So let's get to the first picture. So this photo is called Polar Bear and Her Cub, and it's by Esther Horvath. The first thing that struck me within this photo is, one, there's polar bears. When you see animals that are so rare like this, when you get a glimpse of them in the natural habitat, it is a seminal moment. I think the big selling point of this image is the character that you get from the polar bears. If you look at the cub, the way he's looking at the flag, which is probably his first time looking at a human object of any kind, never mind like the first red object that he's ever seen, because you have to bear in mind that these animals live in the Arctic Circle, and most of what they see is literally black or white. This is probably the first time that this cub has ever seen the colour red, and that would explain why he's so attracted to it, but also it's probably his first encounter with us humans. You can see his expression on his face, that turn up smile that he's got, and his tentative paw as he's about to touch the pole, which is really cute. And having that character really contrasts with the mother who you see on the left, who is just plodding along like it's not her first rodeo, like she's seen all this before. It's like, it's just the humans, calm down kid. That story that you get of the mother and the child, of the mother just being kind of complacent, bored, and the cub being all infatuated with something pretty mundane like a red flag, is really cute. And for once, with photojournalism, you've got a nice, heartwarming, positive story, something that makes you feel good that there's still, though they're endangered, they're still there, these beautiful creatures in the natural habitat. You have to bear in mind, though, that none of these pictures are staged. They're all candid. They were taken on a chance encounter. They weren't meant to be. So the thing that really gets me is how, when you look at this picture, your eye is guided through it. Let me explain. The way you look at the red flags is kind of guiding your eye from the cub to the mother. The way that the flags slope down from the cub to the mother. It makes it so much more powerful when you realise that this wasn't staged. This picture was taken in the moment, and yet you have the final image and it still guides your eye in that way. But it's not only the red flags that guide your eye, it's also the tread marks in the snow that loop around the back of the polar bear cub to the mother, which also guides your eye. And I just think that these little details that upon first viewing you won't notice, but when you start looking, you can really get an appreciation for how skillful the photographer is to get all these separate moving parts, like contrast of colours, like character within the polar bears, like composition that guides your eye through the picture. Get all these going within a millisecond. That is, to me, that's true art, and that's why I'm making this series. Let's find out what the story is. 10th of October 2019. A polar bear and her cub comes close to equipment placed by scientists from Polarstern, a ship that is part of a scientific expedition investigating the consequences of Arctic climate change in the central Arctic Ocean. The Arctic harbours some of the fastest retreating sea ice on the planet and has twice the average global heating rate. This will strongly affect the global climate in terms of increasing temperatures and sea level rise. Yet Arctic climate systems are poorly represented in climate models. This is because until now scientific missions have not been able to penetrate the region during the 6-month-long night of the Arctic winter. The Polarstern is the central ship of an expedition run by the multidisciplinary Drifting Observatory for the Study of Arctic Climate, also known as MOSAIC. especially designed to withstand extremely low temperatures and break through thicker ice, enabling around 100 researchers and crew to work all year round. Mosaic data on the atmosphere, ocean, sea ice, ecosystem and biogeochemistry will be fed into global climate models. So what you don't get in the photo that you do get in the context is the technological innovation needed to actually get this photo in the first place. And I'm not meaning with the camera, it's actually with the vessel that the camera is sitting on to take the picture. So this picture was taken in the Arctic. Now, up until this point, scientists couldn't even reach the Arctic to do climate studies to find out about how climate change or the climate crisis is affecting animals here. The sea ice is actually melting it at twice fast rate. Maybe I bastardised the fact there, but that it's the average temperature is double, which is shocking. And they need to study that, and the current climate models don't reflect that. You can kind of have a greater appreciation for the fact that this photo, before 2020, 2019, was impossible to get. The main thing that hits home for me is the message in it, is that we as humans, we have a massive impact on the lives of every other species on the planet, but our lives can have so much of an impact on these animals, but we can have a positive one as well, like how this cub plays with this red flag and is very cheerful. It's its first moment being in touch with humans, and hopefully it looks like it's a positive one. But we derive so much joy from their existence as well, and I think this mutual excitement for being in each other's presence is a really nice and heartwarming and rare positive message that we're getting from this. So I think that's why this has been nominated for single photo within the environmental category for 2020. Alright, this photo is called Lake Victoria Dying, and it's by Frederick Noy. So the first thing you notice when you look at this picture is all the water, how that this is a massive flooding. I don't need a headline to tell me that this place has been flooded to hell. The guy in the red shirt there, and that colour contrast is really nice, by the way, it really picks him out. But the guy in the red shirt there is trying to salvage his little rowing boat that is slowly sinking into the green, murky water. So you've got the two trees there that, to me, look like the sails of massive ships that are slowly sinking into the ocean. And I say ocean, I know this is a river, but I'm saying ocean because if you look at it, if you look at the two trees that, again, with composition, almost like gateway, are inviting the viewer's eyes to peer on into the horizon. And all that water is from the flooding. So it's almost like the trees are saying, hey, come and have a look at this problem that you guys have caused. Look at this destruction. So I think that, for one, is really good. And I think that's one of the reasons why this is nominated for single photo of the year. 9th of January 2019. A fisherman who works illegally on Lake Victoria refloats the boat that he keeps hidden all day before going fishing with a colleague in Murchison Bay, Uganda. Lake Victoria, nearly 60,000 square kilometres in area, harbours immense natural resources, but is threatened by industrial, wastewater and agricultural pollution, over-harvesting of resources, land clearance around the banks and decreased rainfall due to global heating. This impacts both biodiversity and the livelihoods of more than 30 million people in Uganda, Kenya and Tanzania. Fishing alone economically supports more than 3 million people, according to the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, yet 70% of fish endemic to the lake are threatened with extinction. Small-scale fishing is illegal because the equipment used catches immature fish before they can breed, but poorer fishers cannot afford the necessary nets nor the larger boats that can take them beyond the worst pollution around the shoreline. So the context gives you an understanding of how this flooding causes a litany of problems for the people of Uganda, Kenya and Tanzania. So I thought that this guy was actually having his boat sunk by the flooding. It's actually the opposite. He's actually intentionally sunk his boat because he's hiding it, because it's actually illegal to fish, because the fish that they get are too young, they're not mature enough. This economy of fishing supports 3 million people. So you were making the lifeline, the food on the table, essentially illegal. You're stopping people from getting food in their stomachs. 3 million people will not eat if they don't go and do this fishing, which is now illegal. It doesn't really say why the flooding started. However, I'm going to just go with the fact that it's a climate crisis. It also mentions that there's immense natural resources, and obviously with this much flooding, all those resources are going to die, including biodiversity. The minerals will be washed away. The earth will never, ever, ever be the same again. And I think that the thing that really gets me is that 30 million people will be affected by this in Tanzania, in Kenya, and in Uganda. And again, these are the poorest people in the world. We're not the ones being flooded on this scale, who rely on the land to get their livelihoods. 30 million people are affected by this. That is half of the UK. Instantly, because of one flood, their income streams cut, which it's not like, oh, I've lost, 20 grand of my 80 grand job. No, it's like, I literally can't bring food on the table for my family. It shows you that the climate crisis really affects the poorest people, one, and it also creates a lot of other problems beyond what you're just seeing, beyond what you may be even aware of, or beyond what you even think is connected. And I think that's what's most insidious and hard to cover about the climate crisis, is that the effects that the problems have that we see of a flooding, of a tsunami, of a whirlwind, typhoon, whatever it may be, actually won't be the end of the problem. It's only just the start, and it will lead to loads more problems, but you won't know that until further down the line. And it may not be you that's suffering, but it may be someone across the other side of the world. And I think this picture really communicates that. So this picture is called Battling the Marsh Fire by Noah Berger. Now the first thing that hit me with this picture is the contrast of the colours. You have the fire and the scorched land creating this really strong navy blue, black tone which dominates the picture. And then the rest of it is the yellow-green of the grass that you see. Now, I thought this might be Australia because if you probably remember that there was those horrible bushfires that affected Australia at the end of 2019, but I also think that it potentially may be California, because California is really, really dry and really arid, and it makes it very prone to wildfires. What I think is really good in this picture is the story that you get. I think there's a real hero story here. You can see the firefighters going up the central path that's been created for them by the grass that's left, and they become kind of the hero, moving from left side of the photo to the right side, which if you're a Western viewer, then left to right, it indicates progress because that's the way we read, so that impacts the way we think. What I also really like about the image, and the thing that I get from it, is a bit of a metaphor or a personification, because if you kind of squint your eyes or look at it through a blurry vision, what I see is some great, huge monster, the jaws of a great creature that is swallowing our heroes, the firefighters, up. Because to me, it looks like a blue whale-like monster that is opening its mouth and it's closing its jaws and eating the firefighters. I also think that what's interesting is that the colours of the uniforms, the yellow, is actually more akin to the green of the grass, rather than the dark navy blue or black of the charred earth. And maybe I'm getting a little too up my arse here, but the similarity between the green and the yellow of the grass and the firefighters, to me, communicates that we're connected to the land. We're more part of nature and the creation of nature than its destruction. As you know, you see them battling off, but ironically, it seems to me more and more these days that we're becoming the latter rather than the former. 3rd of August 2019. Firefighters battle the Marsh Complex fire near the town of Brentwood, California, USA. The Marsh Complex fire began near Marsh Creek Road in Contra Costa County on the 3rd of August and burned until the 7th of August, laying waste to more than 300 hectares of land. Roughly 81,000 hectares 200,000 acres burnt statewide in California in 2019, compared with 765,000 in 2018 and 525,000 in 2017. California usually has a fire season in the fall when strong winds blow across forests and brushland that has dried out from the summer heat and not yet experienced winter rains. Many scientists attributed the early fires to the climate crisis, saying that a warm atmosphere means that the vegetation is drying out more than it did a century ago. Old faulty equipment belonging to the state's largest power companies have also been blamed for sparking fires in windy weather. President Donald Trump accused the Californian state government of bad forest management, saying that was the cause of the fires. So what we learnt from this context is that this was a bushfire in California, but it was an actual smaller bushfire than compared to what has happened in previous years, though you wouldn't have guessed that from the scale of the picture that's shown. In fact, 300 hectares of land was burnt in this one bushfire that lasted from the 3rd of August to the 7th of August in 2019. Now that's 4 days of burning, 300 hectares gone. All right, that's quite a lot, but it's the smallest. So the facts are this: 765,000 hectares were burnt in California in 2018, and then 525,000 in 2017. Now 81,000 burnt in 2019. So that's massively reduced, despite the fact that the climate crisis is worsening. I think what's really communicated is that despite this looking like a huge scale thing, this is actually a smaller incident within the story of Californian bushfire. I'm not sure though that the context given from this picture really kind of, changes the narrative going on, unlike the other ones that we've looked at. But I do think that it really does hit home about how problems that look huge in this context are actually maybe the silver lining compared to what's actually gone on in previous years, which is a pretty sombering thought. So those are the 3 pictures. Now it's time to reveal that which one was the actual winner of the Environmental Single Picture Award in 2020 for the World Press Photo Competition. So in 3rd place is Frederick Noyes' Lake Victoria Dying. In 2nd place is Battle in the Marsh Fire by Noah Berger, which means in 1st place is Esther Horvath's A Polar Bear and Her Cub. Now, the reason I think that this picture won as opposed to the other 2 was because it had a positive story to it. Unlike the other 2, which were negative stories about how we are reacting or creating new climate crisis problems, in fact, this one was about a solution, about human ingenuity and creativity to actually assertively tackle a problem. I'm glad that it was a positive story that actually won, because so much news and photojournalism is about power and about power punching down on people, and that after a while it just becomes really depressing. So to have a picture that's an environmentalism picture that's a positive one is, for me, like really good, really heartwarming, and I'm glad this is one and that it's telling people not just about the problems, but about the great work that people are doing to combat these issues. If you thought Esther Horvath's The Polar Bear and Her Cub picture should have won, then please comment below with a bear emoji. If you thought Noah Berger's Battle in the Marsh Fire should have been the clear winner, then put a firefight emoji down below. And if you thought Frederick Noyes' picture of Lake Victoria Dying should have been the winner, then please comment below with an emoji of a canoe. And with that, I'm going to end the video. I hope you have a nice day. I hope you have a nice week. I hope you have a nice month. Please try and get something out of this isolation, these trying times. Let me know how you're doing. Always love to connect. Keep it cool. My name is McHale-North, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. I shouldn't touch my nose. Well.